The bright lights of the United Earth Council chamber reflected off the polished black table. Dr. Yoon Ha-won sat perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her. She looked calm, but her mind was racing faster than the fastest spacecraft humanity had ever built. Outside the chamber's wide windows, Earth hung like a blue and green jewel against the darkness of space. Colonies dotted the solar system. On Mars, the moons of Jupiter, the asteroid belts. Humanity had spread its wings, and now something wanted to clip those wings. The alien delegation entered the room. They moved differently from humans. Too precise, too controlled. Their bodies were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer between gray and blue. Advisor Reckon led the group, his 4 eyes blinking in a pattern that made Ha-won's skin crawl. Representatives of Earth, Reckon began, his voice translated through advanced language processors. The Galactic Concordance has reviewed your species' development. We are here to provide you with a simple choice. Captain Park Jin-seok stood behind Ha-won, his military uniform crisp and perfect. His hand rested near his communication device, ready to signal Earth's defense systems at a moment's notice. Dr. Kim Eun-ji sat to Ha-won's left, her fingers dancing lightly across a holographic display, analyzing every tiny detail of the alien technology. Reckon continued, his voice cold and matter-of-fact. Your species has 2 options. First, you can surrender all territorial claims beyond your home planet. You will dismantle your space colonies, submit to Concordance oversight, and accept a permanent lower status in the galactic hierarchy. Second, if you refuse, we will demonstrate the futility of resistance. The threat hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Around the council chamber, other human representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry. But Ha-won remained perfectly still. She knew what the aliens didn't understand. Humanity was not a species that gave up easily. Every challenge in their history, from climate change to global conflicts, from space exploration to technological revolutions, had been met with creativity, determination, and an unbreakable spirit. Dr. Ha-won's mind raced through humanity's recent achievements, the quantum communication networks that spanned the solar system, the adaptive AI systems that could solve complex problems in seconds, the nanotechnology that was rewriting the rules of medical science. The aliens saw these as simple technological steps, but they didn't see the true power behind them: human imagination. The Concordance has monitored your communications, Reckon said, pulling up holographic displays showing various human technological developments. We have calculated the probability of your resistance. It is less than 0.3%. Surrender is your most logical option. Captain Jin-seok's muscles tensed. Dr. Yoon-ji's fingers continued their silent dance across her display, each movement revealing more about the alien technology. Ha-won took a slow breath. She understood the game being played. This was not just a military confrontation. This was a test of species, of potential, of spirit. We have heard your proposal, she said finally, her voice steady and clear. The United Earth Council will provide an official response shortly. Reckon's 4 eyes blinked in what might have been confusion or contempt. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. This is an instruction. A small smile played at the corner of Ha-won's mouth. The aliens thought they were presenting an ultimatum, but they had no idea what was coming. The meeting was about to change everything. The moment the alien delegation left the council chamber, everything changed. Dr. Yoon Ha-won's calm exterior disappeared. Her fingers flew across multiple holographic screens, bringing up layers of data, communication logs, and technological analyses. We need to dig deep, she told Captain Park Jin-seok and Dr. Kim Eun-ji. The Concordance believes they know everything about us, but they don't know what they don't know. In a secure underground facility beneath the United Earth Council headquarters, teams of scientists, military strategists, and technology experts began working at incredible speeds. They knew they had limited time. The aliens had made it clear, surrender or face destruction. Dr. Kim In-ji set up a massive holographic display that filled an entire wall. It showed the technological profile of the galactic concordance, piece by piece. Each alien system was examined, pulled apart, studied from every possible angle. "Look at their communication networks," Yun-ji said, pointing to a complex web of glowing lines. "They're perfect. Too perfect. In nature, in technology, nothing is ever this precise. Perfection is a weakness." Captain Jin Seok watched the display, his military mind already working through possible defense scenarios. He understood that this was not going to be a traditional fight. This would be a battle of intelligence, of adaptability, of understanding. Ha-1 pulled up records of previous alien encounters. The Concordance had conquered dozens of species before. Each conquest followed the same pattern. First, an ultimatum. Then, a demonstration of technological superiority. Finally, complete submission. But humanity was different. "We're not looking to fight their war," Ha-1 explained to her team. "We're looking to change the entire game." In orbital stations surrounding Earth, advanced quantum computers began running millions of simulations every second. They were not just preparing defenses. They were learning, adapting, finding patterns that even the most advanced alien technology might miss. Dr. Yun-ji discovered something interesting. The Concordance's technological systems had a fundamental flaw. They were built on a principle of absolute control. Every system was connected, every action predicted. But this meant they were also predictable. "It's like a massive machine," she explained, "where every gear is perfectly placed. Remove one gear and the entire machine struggles." Captain Jin Seok began preparing Earth's defense fleet. But these were not traditional warships. These were adaptive platforms that could change their entire structure and function in milliseconds. Weapons that could become shields. Shields that could become communication devices. In research labs around the solar system, teams worked on unconventional solutions. Nanotechnology that could infiltrate and understand alien systems. Quantum communication networks that could send information faster than light. Adaptive AI systems that could learn and respond faster than any biological intelligence. Ha-1 knew they were preparing for more than just a war. They were preparing to challenge an entire galactic understanding of power and hierarchy. "They think we're going to fight," she told her closest advisors. "But fighting is exactly what they expect. We're going to do something they cannot predict." As hours turned into days, the preparation continued. Every human working on the project understood what was at stake. This was not just about defending Earth. This was about proving that humanity was more than just another species to be conquered. The aliens were coming, and humanity would be ready. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something far more powerful. Imagination. The first attack came without warning. 12 minutes after the United Earth Council received the official communication from the Galactic Concordance, orbital defense platforms around Mars suddenly went dark. Communication stopped. Tracking systems failed. It was like someone had pulled the plug on an entire human settlement. Dr. Yoon Ha-won was in the Central Command Center when the first reports came in. Her team had been waiting, watching, preparing, but even they were surprised by how quickly the aliens moved. "They're testing us," Captain Park Jin-seok said, his voice calm but tight with tension. "Seeing how we respond to a small strike." Dr. Kim In-ji's fingers danced across multiple holographic displays. Lines of code and information scrolled faster than any human could read. But she wasn't just reading. She was understanding. "It's not just an attack," Yun-ji said suddenly. "It's a message. They want us to know how easily they can reach us." The Mars colony wasn't destroyed. Not completely. But it was crippled. Communication systems were down. Critical infrastructure was damaged. Thousands of colonists were suddenly cut off from Earth, vulnerable and afraid. Most species would have panicked. Most would have seen this as a sign of total defeat. Humanity did something different. In the first hour after the attack, Dr. HFY's team had already begun analyzing the alien technology used in the strike. They weren't just defending, they were learning. Every attack is a lesson, HFY told her team. Every piece of technology leaves a fingerprint. Captain Jin Seok mobilized Earth's emergency response teams. But these weren't traditional military units. These were adaptive response groups with cutting-edge technology. Quantum communication devices that could work through damaged systems. Nano repair units that could rebuild infrastructure faster than anyone thought possible. The aliens had chosen to attack Mars. They thought it was a weak point, a distant colony, an easy target to show Earth's vulnerability. They were wrong. Within 6 hours, the Mars colony had restored 60% of its critical systems. Communication channels reopened. Emergency shelters were established. The colonists weren't just surviving. They were organizing. Dr. Yin Ji made a breakthrough. The alien attack system had a pattern. A very precise, very controlled pattern. And anything with a perfect pattern could be predicted, could be countered. They think like machines, she explained to HFY. Precise, calculated, but machines can be understood, can be outsmarted. The Concordance sent another message. It was meant to be a threat, a demonstration of power. Advisor reckons 4 eyes blinked in what might have been confusion when the response came. Not a message of fear, not a surrender. A message of adaptation. The Mars attack had cost the aliens something they didn't expect to lose. Information. And information, in the hands of humans, was the most dangerous weapon of all. They think they're playing chess, Captain Jin Seok said, watching the tactical displays. We're playing something they've never seen before. HFY smiled, a small, dangerous smile. The real game was just beginning. Silence filled the Concordance command ship. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Captain Park Jin Seok watched through a secure holographic display as the first wave of humanity's counterattack began. It wasn't a traditional attack. It was something far more dangerous. Dr. Kim Eun-jae had found the weakness. Not in the Concordance's weapons, not in their ships, but in their communication systems. Every alien system was connected. Perfect. Controlled. And that was exactly why it would fail. It's like a massive spider web, Eun-jae had explained earlier to Dr. Yoon Ha-won. Touch one strand, and the entire web vibrates. Break one connection, and everything falls apart. The attack started small, so small that most would have missed it. A tiny piece of quantum code, designed to look like a simple communication packet. But this was no ordinary code. This was a living, thinking piece of technology that could adapt, learn, and spread. First, it found a tiny gap in the Concordance's communication network, a microscopic imperfection that their perfect systems had overlooked. Then it began to grow, not destroy, not attack, but change. Entire communication networks started to shift. Information began to flow in ways the Concordance had never imagined possible. Their perfectly controlled systems became confused. Their precise calculations became uncertain. On the Concordance command ship, Advisor Reckon watched in growing horror. The holographic displays around him began to change. Colors shifted. Patterns broke. Information that was supposed to be secure became visible. Captain Jin Seok's team had prepared for months. Every piece of technology they had developed was designed for one purpose, to be unexpected. They expect a fight, Jin Seok had told his team. We're going to give them something else entirely. The quantum code spread like a living thing. It didn't destroy alien systems. It transformed them, making them see their own weaknesses, showing them possibilities they had never considered. Dr. Ha-won understood something fundamental about the Concordance. They believed in control, in perfect systems, in predictability. Humanity's greatest strength was the exact opposite, the ability to be unpredictable. Entire alien communication networks began to shift. Security protocols became confused. Defensive systems started to respond to threats that weren't there. The Concordance's perfect machine began to break down, not from external attack, but from internal confusion. "We're not destroying their technology," Yunji explained to her team. "We're making it see itself differently." The attack lasted less than an hour, but its impact would be felt for much longer. Advisor Reckon tried to restore order, but every time he thought he had regained control, something else would change. The quantum code was learning, adapting, changing faster than any system could predict. This was more than a military strike. This was a fundamental challenge to how the Concordance understood technology, how they understood control. When the dust settled, no Concordance ships had been destroyed, no alien lives had been lost, but something far more important had changed. The Concordance had been shown that their greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Perfection is predictable, and humanity was anything but predictable. The communication channels of the galaxy lit up. Something extraordinary was happening. Dr. Yoon Ha-won sat in a small room filled with holographic displays. Each screen showed a different alien civilization, each with its own unique way of receiving information. Some used complex light patterns. Some used sound waves. Some used methods humans couldn't even understand. But they were all watching Earth. "This is not just about us," Ha-won told Captain Park Jin-seok and Dr. Kim Eun-ji. "This is about every species that has ever been told they're not good enough." The quantum attack had done more than just confuse the Concordance. It had exposed something. The perfect system wasn't so perfect after all, and other species were starting to notice. Ha-won began broadcasting. Not messages of war, not threats, but stories. Stories of how humanity had survived on Earth, how they had overcome climate disasters, how they had united when everything seemed impossible. Captain Jin-seok watched the diplomatic channels. The Concordance was trying to control the story, but information was moving faster than they could manage. Every attempt to hide the truth made more species curious. "They're like a child trying to hide a mistake," Jin-seok said. "The more they try to hide, the more everyone looks." Dr. Yun-jae had been working on something special, a communication system that could translate not just words, but feelings, not just messages, but experiences. She understood that true communication was about more than just language. The holographic displays began to show something amazing. Other species were responding, not with anger, not with fear, but with interest. Some alien civilizations had been under Concordance control for hundreds of years. They had been told they were weak, that they could never be more than what the Concordance said they could be. Now they were seeing something different. A small species, a young species, standing up and saying no. Advisor Reckon tried to stop the spread of information, but every attempt made things worse. The Concordance's communication systems, once perfect and controlled, were now working against them. Ha-won understood the real battle wasn't with weapons. It was with ideas. "We're not fighting," she explained to her team. "We're showing something important. No species is alone. No species is without value." The broadcasts continued. Stories of human innovation. Stories of survival. Stories of hope. One by one, other species began to speak up. Small civilizations that had been quiet for generations started to ask questions. They wanted to know more about this human species that dared to stand up to the Concordance. Captain Jin-seok monitored the diplomatic channels. The mood was changing. What had started as a simple ultimatum was becoming something much bigger. A conversation. A challenge to an entire way of thinking. Dr. Yunji's communication systems were working perfectly. They weren't just sending information. They were sending understanding. The Concordance had made a mistake. They thought humanity was just another species to be controlled. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The galaxy was listening. The Concordance fleet gathered. Thousands of ships, millions of weapons, a force that had conquered entire civilizations before. This time, they would not make mistakes. Advisor Reckon stood on a command bridge, his 4 eyes scanning multiple displays. Every system was checked, double-checked, triple-checked. This would be the attack that would crush humanity forever. Dr. Yoon Ha-won watched the incoming fleet through Earth's orbital defense systems. She was not afraid. Preparation was not about being fearless. It was about being ready. They think this is a military attack, she told Captain Park Jin-seok. But they don't understand. We're playing a different game. Dr. Kim Eun-jae had been working for months. Every second of the previous attacks had been a learning opportunity. The Concordance believed in perfect systems. Humanity believed in adaptation. The first wave of Concordance ships entered the solar system. They moved in perfect formations. Each ship connected to the others. Each movement calculated to the smallest detail. Perfect, thought Captain Jin-seok, and that's why they will fail. Earth's defense was not a traditional military setup. It was a living, breathing system. Quantum communication networks that could change faster than the enemy could think. Adaptive platforms that could become anything needed at a moment's notice. The Concordance launched their first attack. Massive energy weapons that could destroy entire cities. Precision strikes designed to break human spirit. But something was different this time. Each weapon that fired was instantly tracked. Not just tracked. Understood. The quantum communication systems that Eun-jae had developed were doing more than defending. They were learning. They're sending a massive attack, Eun-jae said calmly. But every single shot is telling us something. Millions of kilometers away, the Concordance command ship watched in growing confusion. Their perfect attack was not working as planned. Something was changing the battlefield faster than they could understand. Ha-won had prepared for this moment, not with more weapons, but with something far more powerful. Understanding. The human defense systems didn't just block attacks. They absorbed them, learned from them, turned them into something new. A massive energy blast that was meant to destroy a colony suddenly found itself redirected. Not destroyed, not blocked, but changed, transformed into something else entirely. Advisor Reckon watched in horror. This was impossible. Their technology was perfect. Their calculations were exact. How could a small species do this? Captain Jin-seok smiled. They're fighting the war they know, he told his team. We're fighting the war they can't imagine. Each Concordance attack became a lesson. Each weapon became information. The human systems were learning faster than any biological or technological system could predict. This was not just a defense. This was evolution in real time. The Concordance had come to destroy. They were about to learn that destruction was the least interesting thing a species could do. Humanity was going to show them something else. The power of transformation. Advisor Reckon appeared on the communication channel. This was not a military transmission. This was a last attempt at negotiation. Dr. Yoon Ha-won sat alone in the communication room. Captain Park Jin-seok and Dr. Kim Eun-jae watched from a nearby control center. The entire room was quiet. Waiting. Humans. Reckon began. His voice translated into perfect English. You have demonstrated unexpected capabilities. The Concordance is prepared to offer a compromise. Ha-won said nothing. She understood that sometimes silence was the most powerful response. Reckon continued. We will reduce your submission requirements. Instead of complete control, we offer a limited protectorate status. You will maintain some of your current territories. Your technological development will be monitored, but not completely stopped. A small smile appeared at the corner of Ha-won's mouth. Do you understand what you're facing? Reckon's voice grew harder. We have conquered civilizations older and more advanced than yours. We have systems that have worked for thousands of years. Ha-won finally spoke. Her voice was calm, clear, direct. Systems are not success, she said. Adaptation is success. She began to break down the Concordance's entire political structure, not with anger, not with attack, but with understanding. The communication channels across the galaxy listened. Ha-won explained how the Concordance's perfect hierarchy was actually its greatest weakness. A system that did not allow growth would eventually break. A society that could not change would die. You believe in control, she said. We believe in potential. Dr. Yunji was broadcasting everything. Not just the words, but the deeper meanings, the emotions, the understanding behind each statement. Reckon tried to interrupt, but Hawan continued. She told the story of humanity, not as a military history, but as a story of constant change, of species that had faced impossible challenges, of a planet that had survived climate disasters, political conflicts, technological revolutions. Your perfect system, Hawan explained, sees differences as threats. We see differences as opportunities. Captain Jin Seok watched the diplomatic channels. Other species were listening. Species that had been silent under Concordance rule for generations. Hawan was doing more than negotiating. She was showing a different way of thinking about existence. You conquered, she said, but you never truly understood. The communication became something more than a negotiation. It became a lecture. A lesson about what it means to be alive, to grow, to change. Reckon's communication systems began to show signs of confusion. This was not going as planned. Humans were supposed to be afraid, supposed to be defeated. Instead, they were teaching. We do not want to replace your system, Hawan said. We want to show that there are other ways to exist, other ways to grow. Each word was a challenge, not just to the Concordance, but to every species listening. The galaxy held its breath. Something was changing. 5 years had passed since the day the Concordance tried to force humanity to surrender. The galaxy looked different now. Dr. Yoon Ha-won stood on a space station that would have been impossible before. Representatives from hundreds of different species moved around her. Some were tall. Some were small. Some looked like nothing humans had ever imagined. But they were all talking, really talking. The old Concordance was gone, not destroyed, not defeated in a traditional sense. Something much more interesting had happened. It had been transformed. Captain Park Jin-seok watched from a nearby observation deck. He remembered the days of tension, the moments when everything could have gone wrong. Now he saw something else. Possibility. Dr. Kim In-ji's communication systems had changed everything. They weren't just translation devices anymore. They were understanding devices, tools that could help different species truly hear each other. We didn't win a war, Ha-won explained to a group of young diplomats from various planets. We showed a different way of thinking. The new Galactic Council worked differently. No more perfect hierarchies, no more controlled systems. Instead, a network of cooperation. Each species bringing its unique strengths. Each civilization understanding that difference was not a threat, but an opportunity. Some of the older species were still learning, still struggling with the new way of doing things. But the younger species were excited. They saw a future without limits. Ha-won remembered Advisor Reckon, the alien who had first come to demand humanity's surrender. He was here too, not as a leader, but as a student, learning about the new systems, understanding that change was not a weakness. Perfection is a trap, she often told the diplomats. Growth is a journey. The space station was a symbol of this new way. Its design was always changing. Rooms that could become different things, systems that could adapt. Nothing was fixed. Everything was possible. Captain Jin-seok approached a group of young cadets from different planets. They were practicing communication exercises, learning how to understand, not just listen. The old way was about control, he told them. The new way is about connection. Dr. Yunji was working on something new. Communication systems that could help species understand each other at a deeper level. Not just words, but feelings, experiences, ways of thinking. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had invited the galaxy to grow. The station's main hall was filled with sounds. Languages that had never spoken to each other before were now finding common ground. Young diplomats from different species worked together on complex problems. HFY watched and smiled. This was more than a political change. This was an evolution of understanding. Years later, young students from across the galaxy would learn about the moment everything changed. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't a war. It was a conversation. Dr. Yoon Ha-won sat in a small classroom on the Central Galactic Education Station. Around her were students from species she could barely describe. Some had multiple eyes. Some changed colors when they talked. Some communicated through patterns of light. But they all listened to the same story. Strength is not about control, she told them. Strength is about understanding. Captain Park Jin-seok stood nearby, watching. He had become a teacher too, not of military tactics, but of something much more important: how to see potential. Dr. Kim In-ji's communication systems were now used everywhere. They didn't just translate words. They helped different species truly understand each other, feel each other's experiences. The old concordance was a memory now, a lesson about what happens when a system stops growing. Ha-won told the students about humanity's journey, not as a story of victory, but as a story of growth. She talked about climate challenges, about times when humans almost destroyed themselves, about how they learned to work together, how they discovered that differences were not something to fear, but to celebrate. Every species has a story, she said. Every civilization has potential. The students listened. Some took notes with hands, some with light patterns, some with methods humans could not understand. Captain Jin-seok remembered the day the concordance came to Earth, that moment of threat, that moment when everything could have gone wrong. But something else happened. Humanity chose to understand, not to fight, not to destroy, but to show a different way of thinking. Dr. Yoon-ji's latest communication systems could now help species share not just words, but experiences, feelings, ways of thinking that were completely different. The most dangerous thing, Ha-won told the students, is not a weapon. It's an idea. The idea that growth is possible, that understanding is more powerful than control. The classroom was a symbol of everything that had changed. Students from species that would have been enemies before now worked together, shared ideas, learned from each other. Outside the classroom window, the galactic station moved through space, always changing, always growing, just like the civilizations inside it. We are not here to be the best, Ha-won said. We are here to help each other become better. The students looked at her, some with eyes, some with sensors, some with methods of perception humans could not even imagine. But they all understood one thing: potential has no limits.